Warning, we're going to try to do an episode about pirates and medicine without bad words, and while recovering from a case of laryngitis. Here goes nothing. Embarking on a new adventure, in the year 1720, a young sailor is greeted by the famous pirate, Black Bart, and enters into his first day of service.
Oh, Captain Bart, thank you for this opportunity. I won't let you down, sir.
You best not, son. I hope you've checked your morals at the door. We ain't got room for soft men aboard this ship.
No, sir. I ain't scared. I'm ready to sail with you.
Well, you better be a little bit scared. We're going into the great unknown, lad. You're joining the most fearsome crew of rapscallions this side of the Caribbean. We'll be expecting you do your part here.
Oh, yes, sir. I'm prepared to do what it takes.
Are ye? Are you prepared to loot and plunder all ships that be crossing our path? Are you prepared to leave your family behind? Are you prepared to murder at the slightest insult? Well?
I will do what it takes. There's nothing left for me on land anymore.
Excellent. We'll see what you're made of yet, sailor. Are you ready for your first trial?
Oh, yes. Anything. Let's have it.
Well, then I'll be needing you to meet with Eugene here. He's part of our HR department.
The what?
Hello there. Welcome to the ship, the Sea King. I've got this questionnaire for you, and I'd like you to fill it out.
What the hell is going on?
Well, just standard forms, really. I would need you to fill out these forms and submit them back to me by the end of the day.
What does this have to do with being a pirate? I can't even read or write.
That's no problem. We'll take a bloody handprint as a signature if necessary. Now, let's go over your benefits package. Would you like a complimentary orange?
Benefits?
Absolutely. When you join Black Bart's crew, that entitles you to membership in the Red Sword and the Buckler HMO plan for your healthcare needs. I'd say the healthcare plan offers what most would call a mid-range deductible, so not too bad, right? This includes an HSA as well as a dental package. You'll really need that for sure. We don't offer vision at this time. Sorry. Probably not a big deal since it looks like you're down to the one eye anyhow. Am I right? So next, let's talk about profit sharing. You see here, at Black Bart's Loot and Pillage LLC, we value each member's contribution to the business. You'll be automatically enrolled in a 401k, which I'd recommend you take full advantage of. And after 3 years, you have access to stock options.
For historians. We look at cases through our history. It's just Max and Aaron, Mike and me. You gotta listen, you don't have to read. For historians, for historians, for historians.
Welcome, everyone. This is Poor Historians, a podcast delving into the archives of medical history. My mouth is dry because of all the Dayquil I've been taking.
Yeah. Was that a little squeak? It was like,
Oh, man. As three emergency physicians, we will explore the unusual ailments, treatments, physicians, and all related material having to do with the healing arts. I'm Max, and I'm joined here by my good friends and colleagues, Aaron and Mike. Gentlemen, are you ready to talk about medicine on the high seas?
Hey, yes, indeed.
And do you see what I did there?
Yeah, I saw what you did there. It's good.
I just want you to know that I ravaged my vocal cords to try to sound more authentic for this episode.
For the good of the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were you just screaming at The Bachelor when you watched it?
Yes.
Is that a thing? Is that on TV?
I was in a box of emotion.
It most
Is that a
certainly
television program?
I think it still is.
Oh, it definitely still is. Oh, yes.
Shout out. Do you guys have any shout outs?
I would say that some of the ideas for this episode came from, let me look this guy up. There's a good science book called The Ice Pick Surgeon, I think.
Ooh.
Really interesting read, but he sort of drops, as an aside, something about pirates, and it really was only one line. Yeah, The Ice Pick Surgeon by Sam Keane. And he sort of dropped this thing about pirates having disability, and that led me down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, pirates are really interesting. I wonder what Napster was like back in the day.
Ha.
Did he know Blackbeard?
Ha.
Well, at least we have a shout out this week that probably won't start a fist fight among people we work with.
This is very
What
true.
happened?
Oh, just our
Oh.
pharmacist and our EKG techs going.
People fighting over being our super fan. This is
Oh, I see.
Although, of all of our previous super fans mentioned, only one got us a present. Did you guys see the present?
Wait. Oh, I thought you said only one's omnipresent. Here, I could do the other part.
Yeah.
All right, ready? I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It's not intended to provide medical advice. It exists only to entertain.
Thanks, Mike.
Mhm.
Mike had to jump in after I had a coughing fit.
Well, though it's a bit problematic to romanticize crime, I have to say the pirates always felt like the most fun kind of criminals to me. Do you?
Hey, we're
you
just
guys,
jumping in like that. No transition, nothing.
No, well, do you guys
That was
have
a
a favorite
transition.
pirate? That's like, that's
Oh,
part of the transition. You guys, yeah.
I do have a favorite pirate.
You guys have a favorite pirate? Oh, who is it?
My favorite pirate is Qing Shi. She's a female pirate who is Chinese from the 19th century. It's actually a pretty insane story. There's another podcast called Citation Needed that did an episode about it. I would highly recommend anybody go check it out. But think of every famous pirate you've ever heard of, and they don't hold a candle to the things she did. At one point, she had like 80,000 ships under her command.
What?
no way.
Or not, sorry, 80,000 sailors under her command.
Still,
It's insane.
That's wow. Well, yeah. Unfortunately, I have a very sort of culture restricted view of piracy, so I'm not familiar with pretty much anything except our normal, Atlantic.
Hey, which one is Mike's favorite pirate?
Yeah, so I went through there was that Netflix show about pirates. I don't know if you guys watched it. It was the one where like it was kind of informational, very kind of made for TV movie-ish. There was like gratuitous nudity and all that stuff that just
I think I
didn't
watched it.
Well, I'm
advance.
gonna
watched
watch
the
it
first-
now.
Yeah.
It didn't advance the plot of this thing at all. And
I
I
don't care.
remember I think it was Blackbeard. I can't remember if Blackbeard was the one. There was one pirate that was just like, he seemed like a really stand-up guy. Probably not because he would murder and pillage and all that stuff, but they had definitive rules in this code that they lived by. And I think it was Blackbeard. And I think it was like we kind of touched on earlier. It was like, it was a very democratic process. And there's one that like freed slaves and then let them board the ship. And but then it turns out like maybe at the end, it probably wasn't that altruistic. I don't know.
Well,
What you're saying is they're complicated figures.
Yeah.
Complicated
Yeah, but
characters.
seemed like better people than the people living currently at that time.
could have been, yeah. But that's a big caveat. But they were criminal. But yeah, they're very interesting. So
I don't remember who it was though, but it might have been Blackbeard.
yeah, I mean, my favorite's always been Dread Pirate Roberts. I mean, that's my favorite. I mean,
I am
I
the
love that
Dread Pirate Roberts. I am here, but soon you'll not be here.
What's that a reference to?
oh geez, Princess Bride.
Oh God, it's been
Yeah.
all right. Yeah,
Are you serious,
I
Max?
know. I've seen it once.
Once. Oh,
I know.
once. Oh, glaring omission.
As far as I'm concerned, Andre the Giant was a star of that.
Yeah,
He-
I just said his line.
Definitely a star, yeah.
Fezzik.
Most of what I knew about pirates, to be honest, came probably from the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, which, didn't make them seem all that scary, even though legend has it that the ride contained a real skeleton, at least at one point. There was an apocryphal story about Walt
Really?
Disney, who was kind of creepy in some ways. The ghosts are drinking, the raid looks like a party, the boat goes really slowly. I don't know. It's kind of a weird view of what was probably sort of violent. So no doubt, actual piracy was and is quite horrible. But interestingly, this so-called golden age of piracy had quite a few groundbreaking institutions, as Mike sort of alluded to, along with some what I would think of as sort of democratic partnerships. Pirates had for the day a healthcare system and a disability insurance of a sort. They weren't,
That is fascinating.
it's crazy. I don't think they weren't common criminals at all, but I think it's probably still fair to say organized crime in response to unique crime opportunities of the late 1600s and early 1700s.
So was it like whole life or term insurance?
I think, yeah, life insurance maybe less than just disability. Although, no, there was a benefit if you died actually as well.
Yeah,
So
your next of kin gets your cash.
yeah, your next of kin gets a certain amount of money and the loot that you're entitled to, your share.
I wonder what the pirate HMO was called.
Well, I think you had a good shot at it I don't know. We saw that transcript at the beginning, the skit, right?
Uh-huh.
Had one of them at least. Now, along with that, pirate ships would try often to provide for a ship surgeon, took responsibility for illness related to the job with maybe some exceptions or some, caveats. provided, even paid sick leave on shore if they could. And then their disability plan, was standardized in pieces of 8, because that's the only way that you really can talk about, standard units of measure with pirates is how many pieces of 8 do you get?
I would say that I know what pieces of 8 are, thanks mostly to the awesome computer game series, The Secret of Monkey Island. Are you guys familiar?
I'm not, but
Oh, it's amazing. Graphic adventure series from LucasArts back in the day. But I learned everything I know about pirating from that game.
well, what were the pieces of 8? Because
It was like the gold unit that you would trade.
yeah. I mean, when I Googled it, it looks like you divided a Spanish coin in 8 pieces, and that was a piece of 8. So it was sort of a standard unit of
Why
measure.
not just make 8 smaller coins?
I don't know, man. I don't know what.
Yeah, because like an eighth is a really tough fraction to do. Why didn't you
Yeah.
make it like pieces of 10?
Wait, is this how Bitcoin works?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that.
Yeah, their pirates are like pieces of 8, like huddle pieces of 8. And the Dogecoin, they're like, no, that's stupid. It's not a thing.
So,
Pirate coin.
so briefly, the rise of the pirates we think of, although I got to look into the other side of the world now, it sounds like. This went along with the era where tons of valuable stuff was taken for long distances without a way to protect themselves well. So around the height of colonialism, Spanish colonialism, there were just tons of ships going back and forth in the 1600s. And, there were waves of piracy from initially primarily Muslim pirates, Barbary pirates, and the Mediterranean. That's where they were active in the Mediterranean, through a lot of English pirates that were sort of sanctioned by England itself, and a whole war of Spanish succession. But in total, this sort of golden age only lasted about 80 years, which is not that long a time at all, as considering how much of our culture comes from, or how much time we spend sort of having pirate adventures.
I mean, pirate stories are just cooler than most other stories.
They're way cool, right? It was definitely in response to this traffic across the.
Like modern day piracy is actually kind of frightening.
Yeah,
like
it's very different.
What's that movie? The
Oh yeah, the Tom Hanks movie about off the coast of Somalia.
I Am the Captain Now.
Big.
Terrifying. When he turns into a kid and then takes a ship and gets stuck in the Suez Canal.
Yeah, this was very different. Right? So modern pirates, they actually talked about this in some of the articles I read. They don't live on the sea. So that was the big difference. Like these people, they live together on the ocean on their boats, and that was part of the reason I think they sort of had to organize. So they did actually have healthcare and all this such based on the rules of the sea. That's kind of the foundation for why they did things the way they did. And the first set of these rules of the sea came from a document written in Scotland around 1266 called the Rolls of Orleans, or something like that. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong because it's Scottish.
What was the pirate deductible? Was it like a tip of a pinky finger?
You know what? They didn't have, I can't find a deduct. This was, they just were taken care of. It was, there wasn't.
Well, that's not health insurance.
But they were kind of like commodities as well, right? Like you can't have a bunch of sick pirates because then your boat won't succeed.
Well, yeah. I mean,
so they're like financially invested in these people.
I think that's probably where this came from. I mean, it wasn't just for pirates, the rolls of Orleans and the rules of the sea. It was because, you had to try to have a going financial concern with boats, and you needed to have people that worked boats. I'm sure they don't call them boats. I'm sure they call them ships or crafts. Vessels. Yeah. The original rolls were written to regulate wine trade between Scotland and France. So if you look them up, it's like 20 or 30 or 40 articles, and a lot of them just have to do with what happens to the different types of things that fall overboard and whose they should be, and depending on how they fall over and whose fault it is if certain stuff happens. For example, if you were a boat pilot and you wrecked the ship because of ignorance, they could behead you if you couldn't pay for the damage you did, stuff like that. So
I don't want to steer the boat back into the slip now.
Right. I don't know. Is this a really well compensated position? Who would do this if that was the risk? But Article 6, this is kind of a fun one to sort of read in full. It says, and this is from a translation. So if any of the mariners hired by the master of any vessel go out of the ship without his leave and get themselves drunk, and thereby there happens contempt to their master, debates or fighting and quarreling among themselves, whereby some happen to be wounded, In this case, the master shall not be obligated to get them cured or in anything to provide for them, but may turn them and their accomplices out of the ship. And if they make words of it, they are bound to pay the master besides. But if by the master's orders and commands any of the ship's company be in the service of the ship and thereby happen to be wounded or hurt, in that case they shall be cured and provided for at the costs and charges of said ship.
So, if the pirates get off the ship, go on shore, cavort, and do pirate things, get into fights, bar fights, the usual, and then they hurt each other, they ain't paying for it.
That's without leave, though. That's very specific. I would argue, if you sneak off the ship, that's one thing. But if everybody leaves, then you're probably fine.
So as long as you ask the captain, hey, can I go to the bar and carry on? And then you get into a fight with your pirate buddies, that's fine.
Probably. They probably didn't have a ton of fresh water on the boat. It's probably all liquor.
A
lot of it.
Pretty sure it was.
Yeah.
Rum. You get your rum for the day, and who gives a crap if you get water?
It's very in keeping with health insurance to start off with the stuff they don't cover. Be like, all right, so here's the stuff we won't pay for right here. But at least they knew, right? But the back end of it, I mean, pretty innovative, right? And pretty amazing that they would anytime you got hurt, we'll take care of you, basically. There's a second article that goes even further right after that says any sailor that gets sick while in the service of the ship should be put up by the captain with wages and staff and lodging and the same food they got on the ship. So basically, if you get sick while you're in service, they'll pay for you to recover.
Oh, I read that really literally. Like they put them up right next to the captain.
I thought that same thing.
I was like, I don't want them in here, man. Yeah,
that would kind of
get a hotel.
No, they wanted to get people off the ship. So they did know they didn't have germ theory then, but they knew that sick people on the ship was no good. So they would, and pirates, there is some evidence that they did this, but it's a little more difficult because they were criminals. It was much more well established among navies of the time that they would set up sort of shore hospitals and such, and they would put people up, and at the expense of the ship, basically, or of the business that was running the ship. They would take care of these people.
That's nice of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like you said, I think they want to make sure that they have sailors that can take care of things. This led to a whole branch of medicine because most ships appointed surgeons and surgeons' mates to look after the seamen in case they got sick. That last part that says they shall be cured led to a whole system of surgeons and 7-year apprenticeships and certification and so on. But keep in mind, during this time from about the mid 13th century to the mid 18th century, hospitals were, primarily poorhouses, and most medicine otherwise was fee for service. So it's pretty unusual because it allowed for care even if someone had nothing to their name. So most of the sailors that went on these trips, especially the rank and file sailors, were not from the upper parts of society. They were just trying to get a job probably anywhere they could. And it wasn't easy to go to sea. So this was a decent deal.
It actually does sound quite enticing.
And this concept of taking care of the soldiers kind of made it into many versions of what was called the pirate law, or, well, many versions of pirate law that were collectively known as pirate code. One of the most famous of these sort of pirate codes was attributed to a Bartholomew Roberts, who was also known as Black Bart, active.
Oh, a guy from Christmas Story.
Was he in Christmas Story?
He was attacking
Black
Ralphie.
Bart. No, you'll get yours.
Oh, geez. No, I got it. I'm the one who's missing an iconic movie. Sorry, I got to go watch it again. He was only active from about 1719 to 1724, but he was super famous for that time. So he made a big name for himself during that short time. He's born in Wales from common stock, went to sea, was captured as a first mate of a slave ship in 1719. And like almost all ships captured, he had to choose to join the crew or not.
So wait, was his mother or father the whale? No, you said whales.
Whales.
2 whales.
Yeah, 2. Well, no.
Was he
country.
a full whale?
He was not.
Oh, okay.
Are my prepositions
his mother was
unclear
in a
this
whale,
time?
and she had him while she was in the belly of a whale.
Said he was born in Wales. Oh, he was born in Wales.
In Wales, capital W-A-L-E-S.
In the animal themselves.
No, in the country.
That's pretty metal. You are a pirate. If you were born in a whale, you are destined for life on the sea.
That's true.
There's a country named Wales?
Yeah, there is. Has a dragon as its flag, doesn't it? It's really kind of a missed opportunity, to be honest.
No. For any of our Welsh listeners, I do know your country exists, and I have much respect for it.
So he had to decide, and he wrote down part of his decision. He basically said, quote, "In honest service, there is low wages and hard labor. In this," meaning piracy, "liberty and power. A merry life and short one shall be my motto." So he decided, kind of like, yeah, like this current job I'm doing where I went to sea kind of stinks. So I'm going to go ahead and be a pirate because it seems to make a lot more sense.
I mean, he's not wrong.
No, definitely not at the time, right? I mean, they did a lot of the merchant ships. They had similar codes, but they certainly didn't do the other things that pirates did. His code is probably famous because, at his height during that 5 years, he gathered about 500 pirates together, spread across a few ships, and then raided all the way up and down the Caribbean and North American coast. So he made quite a name for himself. Each sort of ship or band of pirates would come up with their own code, but they did tend to sort of copy each other. So they had a lot of commonalities. Every crew member would have a vote. They all got equal access to provisions, including liquor, unless they all agreed together that they were too scarce and they had to ration them. Everyone got equal shares of loot, unless you committed fraud and then you were marooned. Captain did get a double share, but that's still only, at most twice of what any specific crew member would get anytime they got any loot. And they all had specific compensation for injury and provisions to have a surgeon on board. And many, if not all, had sort of specific compensation for injuries that occurred in battle. So they had a scale, 600 pieces of 8 for the right arm, which was the most valuable, 500 for the left or the right leg, 400 for the left leg, and then 100 each for an eye or a finger. So I guess if you lost...
Eye is just 100.
I know, right? You'd think it'd be a lot.
I wonder if his second eye is more. Like the second eye is 1,000.
It's totally 200. You got to go with fingers, right? I mean, you could, as long as you keep your thumb and your index finger, that's about 600 there. Anyway, I doubt they had that much control over it. There was, one of them had a provision for severe injury to the intestines that, quote, required that a pipe be inserted. That was worth 500 pieces of 8.
Where does the pipe go?
I don't know. And
where are they putting it?
I don't really want to know. Was it an early ostomy? So that's a procedure where you bring the intestines to the surface and then sort of secure it there. I don't know.
So basically what you just described is that pirate ships are free-floating societies built on meritocracy and liberty. They have an open healthcare system and payment schedule.
Yeah.
Everybody get.
Why aren't we all pirates?
Well, I thought that, but then again, you get into the stories deep enough, and I'm remembering because initially I said, this guy was, I think it was Black Bart then. He ultimately did not do the right thing at the end.
Oh man.
Anyway,
there were Bartholomew. So Black Bart did have there was records of him freeing 50 or 60 slaves that then served as part of his crew. There were also times, though, when they just burned slave ships with the slaves inside. So it gets pretty problematic pretty quickly.
Everything gets problematic.
Yeah, I remember watching this show and I was like, this guy is a hero. He should be a hero. And at the very end, they're like, well, he took the slaves that he freed and sold them all when he retired. I was like, oh, yeah, nice job.
Never mind.
That's a good way to ruin your legacy.
But there are, I think if you read about piracy, there was certainly a more openness and more democracy to their society than a lot of other places in the world at that time. They were much more open. The whole concept of having democracy at that time, I mean, that was hundreds of years before the United States Constitution was written. So this is pretty.
No, it wasn't. Not Black Bart. Like 20 years.
Okay, fair. All right, not hundreds. But the pirate codes date back to the,
50
okay.
years.
All right. Still before.
Hundreds of months.
Hundreds of months. Sorry, I exaggerated. Also, the penalty for piracy was often execution. So there were other downsides to this, and it still was criminal. So, The quality of the surgeons was a bit uneven, unfortunately. I don't think we should be surprised about that. There was a full 7-year apprenticeship for some ship surgeons who served on the most important naval vessels of the time, but there were also many shortages, and it was a good way to start a career. So a lot of people who were sort of looking to start up their surgical practice would go out on the merchant ships for a couple of years to sort of learn how to practice medicine. So you probably had somebody who was maybe or maybe not trained and could be very early in their career with no backup.
Well, I mean, surgery in the 1600s was lop
Right.
off a limb the best you can.
Yep. They took care of everything, though. So they got called surgeons, but they took care of everything that happened on ship. But
Could
still.
you imagine if you got on the boat and you get Dr. Nick? I'm Dr. Nick. From The Simpsons.
I'm not sure the surgeon was as useful as the promise for disability insurance and shore leave. I mean, that's probably what got people better. For pirates, they had to get surgeons from people that were willing to be criminals or whatever they could take from the boats they raided. So often if they raided a merchant ship, the surgeons that were on board were highly sought after, and they would be, quote unquote, strongly encouraged to take the pirate oath and join the crew. They also would spend a lot of time making sure they got the medicine chests from other ships, because you really want those, emetic potions and laxatives that were used for care.
All the laxatives, emetics, and purging agents. And don't forget the mercury and arsenic that you're taking for your syphilis.
Yeah, for sure. There were books on sea medicine from the time that surgeons could take with them to help for their lack of experience. One famous book on sea diseases by William Cockburn, Scottish surgeon, who was born in 1669.
Oh my God.
Sorry. Those are true facts. I can't. Oh. All right.
Don't say anything, Mike.
I won't.
Just let it be.
Became famous. This guy had a secret cure for dysentery that he developed for the English Navy that he made.
How many pipes that were involved?
He kept it secret for 420 years. Nice.
At least 40 years. It was a secret recipe. I wasn't able to reproduce it, but I'm pretty sure it was probably some variety of opium and mercury and laudanum and who knows what else. But he wrote a whole other book on the bloody flux, and a lot of his recipes actually look like rhubarb or whey with honey. So,
and he made a fortune.
I know.
Giving people.
This is how he made a fortune. That kind of almost want to go back in time, except if I got sick, he'd be the one taking care of me. So, no thanks.
Yeah, forget going back in time and picking up lottery tickets from the 50s. Like, go all the way back to pirate times. Get just 100 pieces of 8. You'll have billions of dollars.
Right?
Just get your arm chopped off and go back.
Get your pieces of 8 and put them in an index fund.
Let your money work for you, son.
His book on sea diseases has quite a bit of advice on the types of foods the sailors should get, like literally hundreds of pages, including how heavy bread is bad because it will impair the circulation, and oatmeal should be given on Tuesdays.
I actually found that book, and it's online. You can read it. Somebody scanned it in, and it's something like 350 pages of this guy expounding on stuff. And he's really fascinated with bread. There's like 50 pages of talking about bread and how each sailor got like a pound of bread a day, and it was too much bread because it was too dense and it was too heavy. And he's really, really fixated on the weight and density of bread. I'm pretty sure his head would have exploded if he learned about carb counting and that sort of fascination. Plus, it was also written in that old English with all the big F's that were actually S's. If you've never seen that, it's really disorienting.
Yeah, it's endless. That book is endless, and it goes on, and he intersperses stuff about food with like little petty asides that such and such a surgeon from Scotland doesn't know what he's talking about with regards to this or that illness.
I mean, it might be true.
It could be.
What's with the oatmeal on Tuesday? What does Tuesday have to do with it?
I have no idea. He had a schedule. He's like, these are the days you should do these things. You should beef on Sundays, and I don't know. He scheduled
Saturdays are for the boys.
That's the most important. That's right. He had a whole discourse on quote unquote colds, which he described as body aches, fevers, and cough. He had a theory. He thought they were from the interruption of perspiration that came from getting too cold at night, usually when the sailors passed out on deck because they'd been drinking too much. So he thought then their perspiration would build up because it wasn't being released, and that would thicken their humors, which would then make them sick. So his big thing, his big health push was advising hammocks for the sailors so they would not have their perspiration interrupted by the cold deck.
Nowhere in the neighborhood of right. I mean, maybe the hammocks.
100,
what about
100 some pages.
Could it be Legionnaires? Maybe like if you're surrounded by all this wet stuff and you're laying on the wet.
The
stuff.
air conditioner broke down and was infected with Legionella.
By accident, right? I mean, passing out face down on the middle deck of a ship in the 1600s was probably not that healthy. But I don't think it was from the interruption of their perspiration.
No.
Probably not.
He has cases in this book, about page 180 or so, if you really want to go read them. All of them are pretty similar. So he treats fevers with what looks like antimony, which is sort of a powerful emetic. So he would basically, anybody would get sick, he would purge them for a day or two, meaning they just vomited all over the place over and over. And then he'd bleed them a little bit, not too much, just a little bit.
Yeah, as you do.
Yeah, as you do. There was another surgeon of the day he thought was way wrong that bled people until their pulse got really weak. And he said that was dangerous. So,
now that guy's onto something.
Yeah. And then he'd give them vinegar and barley water to recover on, which just doesn't make me want to get sick.
Is barley water just beer?
I think it's unfermented, right? Probably. I think. I don't know. I think it's probably got a little more nutritional value than the plain water. I'm not sure. I don't.
My wife recently accidentally bought a 6-pack of non-alcoholic IPA.
Oh, how
and
that's
barley water.
Well, bought it, so I'm going to drink one. And I had one, and it tastes. It's probably what barley water would taste like. It's bread soda.
Yum.
And oddly enough, by the time you've had, because you're trying to make this go away slowly, by the time you're on your 5th one over 2 weeks, I kind of like the taste.
You got used to it?
Controversial opinion. I did. Oh. We don't have to buy it again, but
nice.
In the end, it wasn't the worst experience.
Well, that's good. That's high praise right there.
And now listen to me. I sound great.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do. You sound nice and
lot
healthy.
Better.
So he does spend about 20 pages describing the bruising and tooth loss that goes with scurvy, but unfortunately doesn't really fix it in his section on victuals. So just a little aside, right? Scurvy was a disease seen among many, many sailors and is thought to have killed up to 2 million sailors throughout the age of exploration. So across the centuries where people crossed the sea, probably from Columbus on, right? I mean, that's a huge number of people that died from this disease. And
it's also like a disease we don't see today.
Oh, no,
you have
not
to
at
look
all.
really hard to find somebody with scurvy nowadays. Because basically, I mean, it's a vitamin C deficiency, right? So vitamin C, also called ascorbic acid. It's used by so many enzymes in your body, and it's also used in making collagen, which is like a building block protein for pretty much every tissue: bone, joint, muscle, connective tissues, all that sort of thing. So if you don't get enough vitamin C, you can't make those things very effectively. So your bones start thinning and your teeth fall out and you start bleeding everywhere because your skin's way too thin. And it sounds pretty awful. But I note that you can get vitamin C not only from your good citrus fruits, but also like vegetables, fruits, parsley, and some areas of meat like liver and apparently brain. But like a lot of that stuff you couldn't carry on ships. And so you were limited to like probably beef jerky and bread, heavy bread at that.
You can get it in ivermectin too, in fairly large quantities. It's actually
in ivermectin. I thought that was part of the cocktail. You have to do
I mean,
vitamin C, D.
Yeah. What they call ivermectin is really like a cure-all. It's like mercury for syphilis.
Yeah.
Works just as well.
Mm-hmm.
James Lind was actually a Scottish ship surgeon who solved scurvy with what amounted to a clinical trial at the time. So he divided sailors who had scurvy into groups and then randomized them, I think 2 by 2. So not huge groups, but randomized them to either cider. I would have been okay in that group. Sulfuric acid, wouldn't want to be in that group. Seawater, also terrible. Vinegar, 2 oranges, or spicy barley water. So barley water plus some chili paste. I think
my barley water is too spicy.
But anyway, yeah, the sailors who got the oranges recovered. And he's like, hey, I'm beyond to something. And subsequently, the British Navy started adding lime juice to the sailors' rum rations. I was unable to find anything in William Cockburn's book about adding lime juice. I was kind of disappointed. I was like, hey, is this, common knowledge? But alas, it appeared he was distracted by the heavy bread. So I don't think that would have helped.
Going back to that list of the randomized study, I like I like to picture the doctor sitting there and trying to figure out, okay, I'm gonna try a bunch of different stuff. All right, obviously we're gonna try some oranges. We're gonna try some of this barley water. I'm gonna spice it up a little bit. Let's do some cider. We need some other objects. So you know what? Hey, you drink the seawater. I mean, that's something. And got the sulfuric acid over here. Why not? Let's give it a shot. See what happens. Just seems like he was reaching for ideas.
Was sulfuric? I don't know. I haven't seen sulfuric acid pop up a lot as another cure. I mean, there's
But he
always
nailed it.
the mercury. Yeah, I mean, got it right. I feel sorry for the people that had whatever consequences of everything else.
I'm sure he got it through the IRB of the time.
Oh, totally. Yeah, which was the captain saying, "Sure, give it a try." Anyway,
well, I will say, I will bet that being a doctor in pirate times had some of its own challenges. We've come upon the transcript of an actual pirate and pirate doctor visit from the early 18th century.
Hello, Doc. May I come in to be seen?
Did you schedule an appointment? I'm eating lunch right now.
No, I'm afraid not. I didn't know.
Never mind. It's fine. Come in. What's the trouble?
Oh, thanks. I haven't felt well for the past few days.
Well, can you describe what you mean?
I'll try. It's just that I feel weird.
What does feeling weird mean to you?
It's just like something is, off.
I'm not sure what that means. Could you describe your symptoms for me?
Well, it's hard to say, really. I just don't feel like myself. I feel like my body's just shutting down.
I have no idea what you mean by that. That phrase is not helpful. Are you having fevers?
Well, I don't think so, but I get hot and then I get real cold sometimes.
Yeah, but that's not what I asked you. Let's just take your temperature. It looks to be about 98.6 degrees. No fever then.
That's a fever for me. My body works differently from everyone else's.
No, it doesn't. That's not a thing. You don't have a fever. Let's just move on. Are you having pain anywhere?
Oh, yes. It's horrible, Doc. My stomach is in dreadful pain. It's like I'm being stabbed with a sword.
Well, your chart does mention that you were stabbed with a sword a year ago.
Yeah, but this pain is worse. I'll tell you, Doc. I have a really high pain threshold.
Nope. Nobody that says that has a high pain tolerance. Anyway, are you nauseated? Are you having vomiting?
Oh, definitely. Most every night.
All right. And then how much alcohol do you drink?
Yes.
And sleeping? Are you getting rest?
Well, no. No.
You're covered in bruises. Have you been fighting?
Not lately. I think this one is from me passing out on the deck. Must have been in a deep sleep to get that sucker. Not again.
Well, there goes another tooth.
What's wrong with me? Can you help me?
Look, so you've obviously got scurvy. You haven't been eating your oranges, I imagine. And from what I can tell, you're spending all your waking hours drinking alcohol and passing out on top of the deck at night. You're likely not sleeping well. On top of it, you're constantly exposed to the sun and consistently dehydrated. I'm sure your stomach pains have to do with all of the above and the fact that you're eating a steady diet of salted meats with an absence of fruits or vegetables, not to mention all the heavy bread that's served on this ship. Why is it so dense? I mean, what day do you eat your oatmeal?
Well, on Thursday.
Right. Well, so there's your problem. Everybody knows you only eat oatmeal on Tuesdays.
But why?
How the hell should I know? It's 1725. All I can recommend to treat things is bloodletting, purging, and drinking mercury for the syphilis that you and the entire crew will undoubtedly contract. It's a wonder that anyone has any days on board that they're feeling well at all. Try not drinking, eating some fruit, sleeping in a bed, and more moderate bread intake. Let's see where that gets you.
I think I'm gluten intolerant.
Yeah, I'm quitting the pirate ship.
So, yeah, I mean, almost all the pirate codes specify compensation. Most of them seem to stop a little short of guaranteeing care, but that's probably a function of what they could provide because they were, after all, transient criminal enterprises. There are reports from captured pirate surgeons of keeping sick or injured sailors on shore while they recovered or caring for them on ship. And it was clear that surgeons were prize captives, so they seemed to stick to the laws of the sea regarding care of sailors as closely as they could. Regardless, the pirate crews, because they often came from merchant ships, tended to be from the lowest social rungs of society. And it seems clear that care at sea was much more available than it was on land. It was just a really cool portrait of, admittedly, crime that was nonetheless egalitarian, democratic, and tolerant of whoever would take the pirate oath for a share of treasure. Once pirates agreed to risk their lives, the crews looked after each other much more thoroughly than I would have expected. It's an interesting part of history.
I would say so. Interesting, sexy, good movie material.
For sure. How many Pirates of the Caribbean movies did they have? Like 14?
About half as many Fast and the Furious movies.
We'll see. That's
maybe
all
a third
about
as
family.
many. Well, I think that is all we have for today. We appreciate everyone listening, and we'd love to hear from all of you out there. So if you'd like to send us a message or provide feedback, we can be reached through our website, www.poorhistorianspod.com. There you will find links to our social media sites. We take emails at poorhistorianspod@gmail.com, and we work to respond to all posts on our various social media accounts. If you're old-fashioned, well, I suppose, like me, you probably treat your colds with hot toddies, which I'm going to go get. It's not COVID, don't worry. I already had that. So with that, we will leave you until next time. So bye.
Bye.
Nice. We need a catchphrase. Don't know. Still don't know.
Be right back. I've got
So-
phlegm.
Oh, you go ahead.
Good
man.
amount of phlegm.
All right.
Let me take care of that.
It's a pirate voice. Poor guy.
And pause the recording so nobody has to hear.
No, it's like all of a sudden you get I'm sitting here talking to you guys, and I just feel like my something suddenly occlude my vocal cords, like a
Probably-
bad tickle.
Probably did. All those cilia, tracheal cilia kind of pushing that schmutz out of there. Yep.
And then all of a sudden I get a free snack out of it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least it wasn't a
pretty
worm
gross.
you had to cough up and swallow again. That'd be that we know.
I mean,
of.
it could have been. I didn't look at it.
Still,
Podcast
probably,
is devoted to health.
probably the grossest disease.
Oh God, where the hell were we?